Good day, I'm Martin Gago with Market Radius Research. It's Thursday, March the 3rd. We've got CEO Gordon Deans of Aurora Solar Technologies. Aurora develops testing and control systems for the manufacturing of solar cells. I'm meeting with Aurora today I'm happy to have Gord back. It's been almost 9 months since we talked with Gord about Aurora. I'm looking forward to getting an update on the company's progress of its Insight platform, and obviously with today's announcement of its proposed acquisition of BT Imaging, we will be discussing that as well. But please remember, this is neither a recommendation or investment advice. We are here to learn about Aurora Solar. Gord, thanks for joining us, and why don't you take it away with your presentation?
All right, well, thank you very much, Martin, and hello, everyone. We've got some exciting news that we sent out earlier this morning. I'll start with a bit of an introduction, and for those of you that know about the company, some refresher. Then we'll move into how this business is moving forward in the context of Insight and the acquisition that we announced earlier today. All right, so first of all, just very quickly, I'd like to, too many slides out there. Very quickly, bring the fine print up here. A reminder that I will be making forward-looking statements, and that these are, subject to the confidentiality and disclosure statement in the fine print on this slide. If you want further information on this or to see it on our website, you can go to www.aurorasolartech.com. So a quick refresher at a very high level on the company. We provide quality control systems that are used in manufacturing plants to help the solar cell manufacturers increase their yield, which is the percentage of high quality products that they generate, and their profitability thereby, because these products are sold on the basis of their quality as measured by power output when they're tested at the end of the line. We have a large installed base of products throughout East Asia. Our largest market segment is China. And we are in the middle of bringing to the market our new subscription-based software product that we call Insight. And the product will form the hub of our product line as we move forward. I will explain that later on in more depth. Our market are solar cell manufacturers. These are companies that make the precursors to solar modules. Often they're vertically integrated, and they also make the modules themselves. These particular units are extremely high volume, and they're growing rapidly. Over 30 billion of solar cells are made every year at this point, and it's growing between 20 and 25% in terms of volume as we look ahead. The annual capital expenditures in this industry to support that growth are in the range of 5.5 billion and growing. Within that, our addressable market overall is about 1/10 of that, roughly $500 million.
Gord,
yes.
I'm curious, how many actual solar cell manufacturing plants are there, like ballpark, throughout, I don't know, the world or in China? Or
that number is changing all the time. So about 80%, 75 to 80% are in the top 10, and these typically are large plants.
Yeah.
So roughly of ramped actually operating capacity right now, everything is measured in watts in this industry, and there's about 250 gigawatts. So that's 1,000 million watts of capacity that's actually up and running. There's far more of that that's actually built and is either in the process of getting ramped up or being retired, as the case may be, depending on which end of the life cycle they're on. Of that 250, say about take about 75 to 80% of that, and that's run by the top 10 manufacturers in the world. Those are plants that range in size from typically 3 to 5 gigawatts up to 10 gigawatts. So it's not a huge number. I don't have the exact number at my fingertips, and it's changing all the time anyway. The other ones typically are a lot smaller. They'll be in the range of half a gigawatt or a gigawatt or even 2 gigawatts. So there's many more of those. But for all practical matters, it's really the top 10 that count the most, and we're in several of those companies. Okay, so some of you may be not familiar with what a solar cell is, and I have a slide here to explain that. It's also pertinent with respect to when I talk about our planned acquisition of BT Imaging. So as you can see on the left-hand side of this slide, there's silicon wafers, and these are about that big. It varies, but that's roughly the size of them. And these are sawn from silicon ingots, which themselves are made from purified silicon with some added herbs and spices, or the electronic equivalent thereof. The solar cells are manufactured from the wafers by treating them in the manufacturing plants where our products are installed. And the conversion of wafers to solar cells is the most sophisticated part of the value chain to end up with a solar panel, which is on the top right-hand side there. And the panel is basically a mechanism for wiring together the solar cells, protecting them from the elements with a glass panel on the front, and putting a junction box to get the electricity off them and into whatever you're using, batteries or lights or whatever the case may be. So that's a very, very brief primer on solar cells, where they fit in. But also pay attention to the wafers and what I'd mentioned, which is not on this slide, which is the ingots, because I'll get to that later. The need that we address is this industry. If you go back into the 1990s, it was very specialist industry, very small, making these devices for spacecraft, remote locations, and actually a lot of military bases where they wanted to have independent power supplies. Not a lot of huge volume in terms of mainstream usage. That all changed starting at around 2000. So this industry is a new industry. And one of the things that they're getting better at, but as with all new industries, is that they're on a learning curve to learn how to manufacture effectively. So it's not like paint, it's not like petrochemicals, it's not like pharmaceuticals, and it's not like semiconductors, which have been in the business of doing high volume, high yield manufacturing for a long time. So these companies, they don't make a lot of profit in their solar cell manufacturing operations. Gross profit runs 15 to 20%. And so they're struggling to get above that. If you compare that to, say, semiconductor manufacturing like TSMC in Taiwan, they're running at 50% gross margins or higher. So you really want to get up to higher levels to support your R&D, maintaining your edge competitively, that sort of thing. How do you do that? Well, you do that by manufacturing effectively, because that's your biggest cost base, and that's your biggest profit base at the same time, is your manufacturing of your products. So the challenge they have here is that the raw material costs are high. These are the wafers I showed you on the previous slide. And they increase from time to time. In fact, they've been going up a lot due to shortages recently. We're beginning to see those shortages be mitigated. But this led to slowdowns in the cell manufacturing in the industry for a little while, and certainly slowdowns in expansions that have occurred over the past several months as well. So bottlenecks in certain areas can raise costs, and they, at the cell manufacturing level, they don't have a lot of control over that directly. So these comprise more than 50% of their cost base to begin with. Then they have the manufacturing costs. So those don't scale directly with volume, but a lot of this is very automated, and a lot of it does. So then what's left in the pie is profit. And in this industry as well, it's cutthroat competition. So there's been a consistent decline of about 10% a year in the selling price of the modules, and that moves back up the value chain as well. So this has been beneficial if you're at the end of the value chain and you're selling power systems using solar panels. They're a lot cheaper than they used to be. But it again puts pressure on the profits of these companies. So with their high raw material costs and processing costs and their relentless price competition, what's left for them to do is improve their designs, make the products better, and manufacture them better. And that's where we come in. our products are designed to help them make sure that the variations that occur during the manufacturing process are minimized, and that the throughput impacts of just running the line, so things like downtime, either scheduled or unscheduled, or issues with respect to the performance of particular machines that may not be quite up to par and then need to be looked at, that what we're doing is we're giving them the best intelligence and the best capabilities possible in order to make sure that these are minimized, and when they do occur, that they're briefly there, and then they're mitigated and things continue on in the most consistent and profitable way possible. That's our business. So I've kind of scooped to this slide a little bit. I talked ahead of it, but the point here is that what we're doing is we're saying there's 3 steps to that. There's, first of all, collecting the data. That's the measure point. So you can't do anything without data. So you need to have certain instruments in certain locations within the manufacturing process steps in order to understand what's going on. And another interesting point about this particular manufacturing area is that all the solar cells, when they get to the end, they're each individually tested. Their simulated sunlight is flashed on them, and their electrical performance is tested, and their colors are looked at as well to make sure that they're fitting the right color hues. So there's also data right at the end of the line, and a huge amount of it, really high volume data. So number one is to get that data and make sure that it's reliable and you can use it. The next one is to put the data in the context of the machines that are performing the functions. So that's visualize. So this tells you, okay, so I'm seeing that at a particular machine, there's certain changes going on, and what I'm measuring, where are those changes within that machine? These are large machines that typically batch process a large number of these wafers at a given time. So this helps the operators and the engineers localize issues when they arise, rather than having to hunt around for them. And finally, control is the act of using all of this information in order to be able to say, one, let's find out where we've got problems or where we've got suboptimal operation, and decide what, if anything, we're going to do about that. And number two, make sure that those variations are minimized to begin with. And that's a function of your knowledge. So that's the data sources, your ability to pinpoint where the fluctuations or variations are, and then the inherent capabilities within the equipment and also in the people in order to mitigate those or to make them as small as you possibly can. We're not just a company that builds widgets. We're a company that provides solutions. And the solutions are predicated on these 3 steps and these 3 elements. And we're building a product line around all that.
And I'm guessing when have their facility is running, and let's say their engineers, hey, we've got this new idea on how to better optimize or efficiency of the cell, they can then we'll do a batch with this new recipe, call it, and then they can monitor, okay, this is where it's working, not working, and so forth. So it's whole part of their product development process as well.
It's part of their product development process and part of their optimization as well. So if you say, let's say, for example, that you've got 3 steps, A, B, and C, that you run things through from the raw material to the finished goods. The fact is, in these large plants, is that at step A, step B, and step C, you're going to have a multitude of machines that perform each of those steps. So when you say, let's try a new recipe on one of the machines, say in step B, the thing that you have to keep in mind is that you're not really seeing what the results are until you get the output of step C. And variations amongst the different machines in step A can affect what you're seeing in step B. And then the variations in step C kind of muddy the waters with respect to the new recipe you were trying out in step B. So this is a very interesting and I have to say pretty difficult challenge to deal with. And that's why we built Insight as an example, is to be able to, so it's not just collecting the data. You can put the new recipe in one of the machines in step B, and you can look at it on its own right there and say, okay, well, it's doing this, it's doing that. But what the most important thing is it having a beneficial result at the end of the line? And that's the hard part to figure out. And right now, it's pretty laborious methods to do that. And it is, to put it plainly, not necessarily always done in a way that your high school chemistry teacher taught you how to do your chemistry experiments properly. So, that's another thing we provide is we provide the means to be able to make sure that the information is not muddied by inconsistencies that make it so that you may draw the wrong conclusions.
Great.
What you're doing.
Thanks.
So this brings me nicely into Insight, which I think many of the audience may be familiar with. So this is a product that we're in the process of bringing to market now. We've been through validation steps with this, determined that it works and that it actually provides value. So that's great. Now we're into getting it into the first usage within China, which is the main market and the largest target for it, simply because 80% of the world's solar cells are made there. And what we're doing with that is basically many of the things I alluded to earlier, providing the means to be able to look not just at any one machine or any portion of one machine or even one process step, but the whole plant from raw material into finished goods out. And to be able to then sort of pull the threads apart to see what's going on in the converse within each of the individual machines at any given time in the plant at any of the process steps. And this is where we get into the rapid event detection and isolation. And ultimately, as we move through various tiers of features that we're developing in Insight, more and more detailed failure mode analysis and troubleshooting capabilities as well. The other thing it gives is benefit is what we found with these customers is many times they don't have consistent reporting, and this makes it harder for them to take collaborative action. So that's a key element in this as well, is just, it's not just having the data, being able to generate insights, so to speak, from the data, but also making the data consistent across the spectrum of the different process engineers that are responsible for different steps in the manufacturing, the management of the plant, and so forth. So in that sense, for example, you can, it's a web-based interface and you can see it on any computer that's within their firewalls on their intranet. And this collectively gives them things that for many of them are much more organized and new and useful for them than the manual methods that they have been using in the past. So ultimately the results, obviously, more knowledge, like I talked about, better visibility. But when it comes right down to the bottom line, the intention here is to make sure that what's happening is that you're getting more revenue. So reducing downtime or making it so that the downtime is optimized. So for example, in Insight, because we're constantly monitoring all the tools within the plant, and we can see what the variations are, both in the short term, like over a day-long period, but also the long-term days and weeks, that can be used to schedule maintenance much more optimally than just following a particular rigid schedule on that. The other thing is that it allows you to be able to conduct these new recipe experiments without having to shut things down or do a lot of special batches, which tend to affect throughput and therefore revenue as well. And finally, from a profitability perspective, knowing which machines are operating at what level of performance allows you to be able to do things like set preferential routing so that in the plant, you're always trying to get the material through the best performing machines at 100% of their capacity all the time. And that changes, by the way, from day to day. What's performing well one day is sometimes not the best performer the next day. So you can dynamically allocate your flows of materials to make sure that you're making the most out of what you can at any given shift and day as well. All of this ultimately results in increased profit, and it can be significant because of the large volumes we're dealing with. A 5 gigawatt plant, which is mid-sized to mid to large for one of the top 10 manufacturers, would generate roughly about 900 million solar cells a year. And the fact is this can add up to multiple millions of dollars if you even just get small incremental benefits with respect to the efficiency of the cells and decreased downtime as well.
And just on that profitability, you get more, I guess at the end of the year, they would produce more cells, which would increase profitability. And then as well, they would hopefully produce a higher quality cell, which they would get better margins for. Is that essentially where the two sort of profit driver increases are?
That's them, yeah.
Okay.
So like I said earlier, is that at the end of the line, or the facility overall, there's multiple lines. They test every single one of these, and the pricing is in cents per watt. So an average solar cell would generate between 5 and 5.5 watts under standard test conditions. So you get a little bit more, you lean more towards the 5.5 rather than the 5. You charge a higher price for it. Right now, I haven't checked in the last 2 weeks, but the price 2 weeks ago was about 14 cents per watt for a finished solar cell. So that that gives you an idea that a little bit more on that when you add it up over these millions of cells, you're a penny here, a penny there. Pretty soon you're talking big bucks.
Yeah, great.
So with Insight, later on, I'm going to give you a visual of what I'm about to say. We're building this to be our hub for the products, for the product line, and for what we're offering to the market. If you consider companies that are well established in the field that we're developing the company in, you're considering companies such as KLA. So KLA Corporation is a manufacturer of instrumentation and yield management and control systems for the semiconductor industry. So much bigger industry, and KLA started in 1975. They built the company up through a combination of organic growth and acquisitions. It's a $6 billion a year company now, traded on the NASDAQ stock exchange. In principle, it's a good model for us to follow. The idea there being that they have a cohesive set of tools and instruments and these software systems that pull them together, and that those act as hubs when people are looking at it from a process control and optimization of the plant perspective. So we're going all in on that in particular. And coming back to my measure and then visualizing that control aspect, Insight plays into the visualize and the control part. So as we build the company, more and more capabilities to bring in data through the measurement part also allows us to enhance the value of the visualize and control parts as well. So there's a virtuous circle there. Anyway, coming back to this slide, today we're midway, actually a little more than midway through this first chevron, or the first phase, which is the selective introduction and the validation of the phase 1 product. So we completed our initial evaluation. That was outside China. We've overlapped it with the beginning of our first Chinese evaluation project, which is well underway, and it's on track with respect to the timelines that I guided with before. So we expect to have that completed in the first half of the year. And
when you talk about that, the software is installed at the client site at this point, and they're running with it, and they have to run with it for 6 or 9 months and tweak it and try it to find out how well it works. Is that roughly where we're at?
Well, the first one, time frame you're talking about for the first one was about that. But what we're expecting and we're seeing as well is that as we move through with any new customer, you're always going to go through some kind of an evaluation process. What we're doing is we're also learning how to make those faster. So we expect, this one's moving along at a faster pace, for example. So I certainly don't expect it to be 6 to 9 months, as we move forward. We expect to get it down once there's a few of these. We expect it to be actually, I don't want to say specifically 30 days or 60 days, but that's the sort of the time frame that we're targeting.
Is the Insight now installed at the Chinese client site?
Yes, it is.
All right.
So yeah, we got it. So we got it installed just following when they came back from Chinese New Year.
Okay.
We have experienced, you know, the conditions that everybody else has, which is in China, every once in a while they'll do a spot, you know, you can't travel here because we had a COVID case kind of thing. And then, so I have to caution the audience that we have no control over those situations. We have in the past had to change out people depending on where they are. So if our application engineer that we want to send to a site happens to be in an area where there was, you know, across town a COVID case detected and they've decided to restrict travel for a while for everybody, then we send somebody else instead. So, you know, we deal with these things as they arise. It hasn't slowed us down on this project. You know, I just want to make sure everybody understands that.
Are you able to send anyone from outside of China into China, or like, I know there's severe quarantine restrictions, or is it just basically it doesn't work there?
Right now, it doesn't work. You know, we're hoping that will ease up, but you know, realistically, they're pretty tight, and there's a major party Congress coming up in the fall, and they may decide that they want to keep it tight until then. We just don't know. Nobody does. I mean, you could talk to Foreign Affairs, and they would probably say the same thing as we don't know. So anyway, back to this. So we're moving along according to plan here. And so the next step after what we're doing today is while we continue to work with our lead company in China, as we pass certain milestones there, we'll also start the process of introducing it to other companies in China, including some of our existing top 10 customers as well. So, you know, I'll be releasing news on that as that develops over the coming months. So we're pretty excited about this. We definitely have alignment with this company that we're working with, and they're actually seeing this as potentially something that's really going to be super beneficial for them. So we want to prove to them that that is indeed the case. So now I want to talk a little bit about how we're building around that hub. So first of all, an essential piece of data for Insight is the cell tester, which does all that end-of-line testing on these to test their electrical performance with the simulated sunlight. So about a year ago, we announced a partnership with Wave Labs. So what this did was this gave us a solidification with one of the two companies that dominates that part of the market. And we have both what I would describe as being a marketing relationship within China and around the world as well with them. But most importantly, what we have is we have a technical relationship with them that allows us to make sure that you know, we've got good data connections with their systems, and also that we can leverage developments they make in terms of how they advance their own product to add new features and new capabilities into Insight that now we can sell at a higher price. So it allows us to start producing basic next, and then higher and higher tiers of the Insight subscriptions, and market those to our customers. So this is a very mutually advantageous relationship that we have with Wave Labs. We also work with the other companies that are in this space, particularly one called Home. And in fact, with our first evaluation, all the testers were Home testers, so it works. And but we don't have the same kind of relationship we do as we do with Wave Labs. We chose Wave Labs because they've got as we look forward, they've got a roadmap and a runway in their products that we feel we can very strongly capitalize on for our benefit. The other companies, they're great companies. We love working with them, but Wave Labs is just a little bit of a step ahead on that. Now we'll get to what was announced earlier today. So the cell testers are not the only source of data in the manufacturing lines. Our DM instruments provide data, and BT Imaging, the company who we plan to acquire, and I'll get a little bit into the mechanisms where we're at on that in a minute. produces a complementary way of examining materials in the value chain, pretty much all the way from the ingots through the wafers to the cells. And they have products that this technology was invented at the University of New South Wales, and they're a spin out from there, that do something called photoluminescence. So when you're sitting in your car, if you've still got old-fashioned instruments in your dashboard, rather than just an LCD display, the needles on your gauges at night when they're glowing, that's luminescence. That's actually electroluminescence. Photoluminescence, electroluminescence means you apply an electric charge and something glows. Photoluminescence means that you flash it or excite it with light, and it responds, it glows back. So, you know, bioluminescence in the oceans, when you see waves in the night. Photoluminescence is when you shine a bright visible light on a solar wafer or a solar cell, and then microseconds later it re-emits that energy in the infrared. So the imaging is an infrared camera, and you can see an image in the top right-hand side of this. And if you look very carefully at the image, in the lower right corner of the solar cell, which is imaged there, you'll see a little mark coming off one of the broad vertical lines, and that's a crack, not visible to the eye. And those, depending on where they are, those can be benign or they can be bad. So that's one example of the sorts of things you can see with photoluminescence. There's all kinds of other useful things. Just the amount of glow, where the glow is the highest in it, and all these things tell you all kinds of information about the fabrication processes and also the basic raw material itself. So what this gives us is it gives us another data source that we can use to enhance the value of insight. So these are standalone revenue products on their own, but they also can be leveraged by us to build value within our hub insight.
So they essentially
that's critical to the strategy.
They plug into the system, so Insight collects the data off of this to get a more fulsome view of the production line.
Insight uses this data, the end of the line data, the DM data, ultimately. It's an evolution to get there. So what we're doing is we're putting the pieces of the puzzle in place to build that up. That's our strategy. We're not finished with it either.
Yeah.
We keep doing this.
Yeah. When what you mean by that is there other sensor equipments along the production line that you'll be able to plug into to collect more data and more insight in the process?
There's a few, not like by type, not a ton of different types. There's camera systems, for example, and so forth. And we look at this from a standpoint of what serves us best. Is it proprietary development inside the company? Is it an acquisition like this planned acquisition? Is it a partnership? What's practical, cost effective, and what serves us best strategically? That's how we look at these things. So this has been a while coming. We've been working on this for a little while. Now, there's a few points here that are also in the press release that I really want to drive home with everyone in the audience. Number one, this isn't some company that just started yesterday. They have a strong brand. They're considered to be the leader in this field. They invented it, and they're really respected. They have a product line that covers everything from design of the solar cells, so laboratory type applications, all the way through to production line use. They cover the scope of the value chain from the ingots through the wafers and the cells, and there's possibly some applications in modules as well. So this broadens our market coverage in one dimension. Another one is that because of the nature of the use, not just within production lines, but also elsewhere, it also gives us some geographical diversity as well, because these are sold throughout the world: Europe, North America, Asia.
Are they only for the solar industry, or are there other industries, I don't know, semiconductors or who knows what else, where that same technology can be applied and they sell outside the solar sector?
It's all solar. I mean, there's potential applications elsewhere, but I'm not going to speculate on that. But their business is all solar. The other thing that I would like to point out about this is that that this is accretive to earnings. They're moneymakers as well.
They're profitable, cash flow profitable.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of these machines, let's say the one we see there in the image, can you give us a ballpark sort of manufacturer suggested retail? Like, is that a $50,000 machine, a $100,000 machine, a $500,000 machine?
Well, the pricing is proprietary.
Yeah.
And I might also mention that we are still covered with an NDA with BT Imaging. So we'll be talking more and more about this as time goes on, but we're working through kind of how we're clearing the information flow and all that. This is all pretty, getting to this point was done basically over the last 2 weeks. So that's progress that we're working on.
Okay, so that's just
they range from 5 figures to 6 figures.
Okay.
And a decent range within those. Depending on the amount. Like, they've got some things that stand alone. This one's shown above what looks like to me a conceptual production line. There's a little CGI going on in this image. But I've seen them, and some of them, the ones that particularly are used in labs, and these aren't necessarily just research labs, but laboratories that are attached to production facilities. They can be big floor standing units. So this is it's a broad range in that sense.
You mentioned that, like, you've been talking about stuff with them over the last 2 weeks, but your relationship with them is not just 2 weeks.
Oh, no, it's months ago. And I knew this company when I started Aurora.
Okay.
Yeah, not well, but I came to know them more and more over time. Okay. And we have people within Aurora who before us had worked in organizations where they actually were users of these systems and involved in the technology around them.
Okay, so you've been working on this deal for not just 2 weeks, but for months, trying to sort of stick handle it?
Several months.
Okay.
Yeah. You think you can do all these things really fast, and I've been involved in M&A in a previous company, and you look at your watch or your calendar at some point, and you say, boy, where did all the time go? It seems like we just started talking yesterday, but it just takes time. Yeah. Anyway, the other thing I'd just like to let everyone know is that we're announcing this as a planned acquisition. It's solid. There's binding commitments in place and it's our choice to move forward. We're about to complete the last of our detailed due diligence, and we'll keep the people advised once we reach the appropriate events with respect to moving towards completion. But looking ahead, this is accretive to our business. It's going to give us a stronger aggregate team. And we expect to move as quickly as possible. We've given timelines in the press release, but we're hoping to be able to complete this much faster than that. Another thing I know that somebody's going to ask me at some point is are you planning on doing any financing? And the acquisition itself is a growth catalyst. It doesn't require any incremental financing on its own. But on the other hand, if the financing conditions are right and the market conditions are good, then we may choose at some point in the future to make an acquisition, and that will be in order to drive this the combined forces together faster and harder in order to accelerate growth.
I think you misspoke there. You said you may decide to do an acquisition. You mean do a...
We are doing an acquisition.
Yes, but you may do the financing.
May do the financing, yes. Please let me correct myself. We don't need to do a financing. We don't currently have a plan in place to do that. If the market conditions are good, then we may choose to do one in order to accelerate growth. That's what I was trying to say.
Okay. All right. Good. I think you said that clearly there. All right.
All right. So on BT imaging, that's pretty much it. We will come out with more information, as I said, as we move forward. And we're really excited about this. After working on it for a long time, knowing that we had something that would, especially as we started to develop insight further over the past year, really, so we said, this is going to be an awesome combination. It's really, really going to be something that's going to take the industry by storm. And we're going to work hard to translate that enthusiasm into results.
And they're one of the leaders in this field. So I presume the top 10 solar manufacturing companies, they're all clients of BT?
Pretty much. Virtually every major lab, which includes the ones in the production lines where they'll bring stuff to have BT imaging equipment in the world. And the production lines themselves, they have a fairly good embedded base in the wafer lines, and less so today in the cell lines, but that's an area that we're going to look at. One thing I wanted to kind of bring to people who are more visual thinkers is this slide. So when I say Insight's a hub, and that these things provide the ability to create more and more value inside Insight, you look at it this way on this picture. So I put Insight at the center, and in the background you see a production facility. So within that production facility, there are multiple instances of the things that are marked data stores. So there's our DM instruments there, but there's also other instruments. There's BT imaging instrumentation, and then there's the testers, Wave Labs or anyone else's. And the idea here is that while these can all operate in a standalone way, and they produce data, they produce measurements and so forth, it's the bringing them together and being able to do the things that we talked about much earlier, where you're saying, okay, how do I know that everything in the plant is operating within parameters? And where do I see things that are going off track? That's the key thing in terms of how you really make the manufacturing cost effective and profitable, is be able to put it together. But you need the reliable data to put together. So the two go hand in hand. And for us, it's a solution that we need to provide. If all you do is provide one element of this, then there's two things that are not optimal about that. One of them is that you're leaving money on the table.
Yeah.
Frankly. The other one is that when you bring these together in the way that we are, you can make them work much more effectively than somebody who does it post facto as a system integrator. This is sophisticated stuff, and we think that we have a leg up on this over everybody in this area. So our objective is, now that we've gotten through the beginnings of the qualification of the product, is that we've kind of got a flywheel turning, and we're just going to keep putting energy into it. So this acquisition and then the work with the company in China we're doing now and so on is just putting energy into making that flywheel move faster and faster and faster and faster.
And then I guess on the sales and marketing side, lots of synergies with their salespeople and distributors and yours, and sell more things with one relationship, et cetera.
I had a call with a guy who runs their sales and marketing last night to talk about, as we look ahead, what we're going to do. Where we're going to start first, how are we going to do this, how are we going to bring teams together, that sort of thing. So, this is something that we've been thinking about and working on.
I'm going to ask another question, see if I can tease it out, if you can get it through the NDA. Could you say, does the company do like 7 digits worth of revenue or 8 digits worth of revenue, or you just can't go there?
I can't go there right now.
Okay.
Soon.
All right. We got a bunch of questions. Are you finished up, Gord, here? Can we switch over to the questions from the audience? We've got a good dozen here, or just want to wrap it up before we go to that.
I just have my last slide here that I won't read through. It's the alternative title for this slide, other than key investment highlights, is why you should own Aurora shares.
Right.
But let's move to the questions and people can read that while I'm answering those.
All right, here we go. I'm just reading them off the cuff here. They've just come in, so I'll try to interpret them as we go ahead. I would like to know about the details surrounding the financial arrangement with the lead trial customer. Now that the test phases are over, do they plan on paying for the Insight service? If not, why? At what trial test arrangement will eventually lead to you guys being paid for this one, next one, or following there?
What we saw there was that really at this stage they're fully occupied with some complete re-engineering of things that they're doing in order to upgrade to the next generation of cells, and that has them pretty distracted, and also is occupying a considerable amount of their budget right now. They're a small company, a technology leader, otherwise they wouldn't be doing this upgrade and so forth. But we found that the timing of getting to the end of this was right in the middle of distractions associated with that. So what we decided to do was to say, okay, so we're gonna wrap it up. We keep the relationship going with them. We're not going to pester them about this while they've got the bosses breathing down their neck on getting this new cell technology up and running in their plants, which is different than optimizing and running your day-to-day operations. So that's really a little color commentary on the situation there. Our focus now is we got what we wanted out of that, and we got the validation that we needed. So you got to keep a laser focus on what is it you're doing in order to bring your product into the market, and that is to make sure this next one in China, which is the main market, and we are dealing with an existing production plant. There's not any upgrades going on or anything in there. It works well and provides a good view for people in the market in general there, not just that company as well. It truly is different doing business in China than it is outside China. So this is something that's important. And ourselves, we also want to make sure that we stay focused on the main event. So that's a far higher priority, and frankly for you there and for us as well, both as management of the company and also as shareholders, that's the right focus.
Prove out the technology, then once it's proven, then you can get into the sales cycle and the
the previous customers, they're an existing customer. They've had our instruments for quite some time and so forth. So we have a good relationship with them. You just in any sales situation, what you need to do is you need to say, okay, so how do we work this as we go forward, and that's what we're doing.
I noticed 4 hiring positions on your website. How has that search for talent gone? Will you be expanding your Chinese-based team as well?
Hiring right now in Vancouver for tech is difficult. I'll be honest about that. We've got Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and did I mention Amazon? And by the way, there's also Amazon looking for people, and these are like just giant hoovers. Having said that, we get people because they want to work in clean tech, and I actually hired somebody from Amazon.
The people you're hiring, are they more on the Insight side, software engineers, or are they more on the
product manager?
Okay,
more software.
Yeah.
So what we're doing as well is that we're considering remote development as well, because we can't wait. We need to get going. And my head of product development knows how to recruit and build development teams internationally. He's had teams that are all over the world, up to 500 people before. So we're pretty confident in our ability to do that. But I do want people to understand that there's a hot market right now in Vancouver.
Yeah,
and competition is fierce. So I'm going to be candid about that.
And are you expanding your Chinese-based team as well?
Yes. Yeah. So BT Imaging has a Chinese team, roughly the same size as ours. So there's an expansion right there. But we also, with Insight, we need to do 2 things. One of them is that We have traditionally set things up so it's a classical kind of sales and service environment with, I would say, junior to mid-level people, and then we would bring people from here as needed to talk about the major commercial issues or major technology discussions, that sort of thing. We're going to build that capability up right there for this. So we're going to also be looking at more senior people who can operate not just within the day-to-days, but also strategically, and be able to communicate effectively and have a meeting in the minds with the senior management in our companies as well, our customers' companies, I should say, as well.
Right. With the Insight product, have you figured out what the ROI is on your system yet? Are you able to talk about that at all?
We have priced it with the expectation that based on our modeling, and this is one of the things that we do in the evaluations as well, is that we test our models against what we see realistically, with the expectation that what we're doing is that we're providing them with a value multiple in the range of about 7 to 8 times over what it's costing them for the subscription.
Okay, so if it costs them $100,000 a year, they should be saving $700,000 or $800,000 a year.
Something like that. I look at it the other way around. I was saying, 15% of roughly of what the total financial benefit is. Yeah. Whether it's cost savings or whether it's increased revenue through less downtime.
Okay, the benefit of that. Okay. Yeah. All right. If you can disclose, they're just asking about revenues, and profitability. So you can't say how much it is profitable, but it is profitable.
I said it was accretive to earnings. That's in the press release as well. So you can draw your own conclusions.
Okay.
We'll be more forthcoming on that. Don't worry.
For sure.
The NDA that I have is governing things at this stage.
Yeah, I'm curious. The next news we're gonna get is that we've closed the acquisition, or will there be some interim updates before the final close, where we'll sort of be given signal that things are progressing?
My expectation is we haven't really decided exactly how we're going to manage the news flow associated with this. Yeah. And as I said, we're going to move proactively to close this and to get on with building the business. So I don't really want to speculate, but definitely there'll be news associated with the closing. And as time goes on, we'll provide more information, obviously, about the business, what the numbers look like, and also how we're going to actually start the business of working together as a unit.
What cost savings have you seen so far per 5 gigawatts? What will it be in the new Chinese plant? Yeah.
That's a very difficult question to answer for 2 reasons, but I'll do my best. The reasons are, number one is that we're just in the process of getting it up and running in the new Chinese plant. So what we have our projections, which I mentioned before, just in terms of what the ROI is. But like I said, the purpose of these things is to find out what's realistic and what really happens. We anticipate there'll be significant benefits, and some of them actually will be implicit. One of the things that's got them really excited isn't what they can do with any of the information, but actually just having the information to begin with. Like they're running sort of semi-blind right now, and so that's got them pretty excited. The other thing is, what was the benefit in the previous one? I'm going to put it this way. In my press releases and my descriptions of this, I said, there's Insight, which is constantly monitoring what's going on in all the tools, and is able to separate all the confusing aspects of, got multiple pieces of equipment outputting into the next multiple pieces of equipment, and the flows are random between them of the raw material and so on. And we are able to work through all that data and isolate things so you can pin it down to, okay, this is exactly how this particular tool is operating in this timeline. Well, the way they do it is every day they do these things they call hot runs, where what they say is, okay, we think we might want to look at, or we have a problem at this step in the process. And we've got X number of machines there. So what we'll do is we'll get a dedicated path for raw material. We'll guide raw material through this dedicated path till we get to those machines. Then we'll split it. And then we'll bring it back together through another dedicated path to the end. And then what we'll do is we'll look at the splits and we'll compare those and see if we've got one machine that's better than the others, or one that's worse, or whatever the case may be. So there's this sort of educated guess to begin with, what you want to look at. Then there's the time spent putting all that together. Then there's the running of it, which does tend to have a minor effect on throughput. And then there's the analysis of the data. And Insight does all that, and it does it on all the machines all the time. So for any one machine, Insight's getting between 4 and 10 times the amount of data in a given time period. So statistically, if you're statistically minded, the information is a lot more solid that Insight provides. And the other thing is, because looking at everything, you can do a rank ordering of what you see as being, the most significant issues that affect the end of the line performance. You can't do that with the hot runs. Now, if you did hot runs all day long and you did nothing else except hot runs, you could replicate what Insight's doing. And then you would have the same quality of data and the same ability to be able to stop making educated guesses about where you think a problem is, and know where it is, how long it's been lasting, and whether it's been intermittent or continuous or whatever the case may be. That's the biggest value. Everything else, maintenance intervals, preferential routing, troubleshooting, decisions about whether you want to try new recipes, all that stuff flows from being able to do that properly. You can't right now. So for apples to apples comparison, let's say that you actually do enough of these hot runs to replicate the quality of the data and the ability that Insight provides you to actually really optimize your line. So I'm putting this in the context of the cost to put that amount of effort in. Millions, single-digit millions in that plant, which is running at about it's under a gigawatt. Just for that, leaving aside the stuff you do to act on the benefits, just reducing that cost. This is the thing we're going to come back to them on.
Yeah.
Later on, when they're less distracted.
Yeah.
The challenge we have there, by the way, is that they invented the hot run method, the guys that we're talking to. So,
Okay.
there's a little bit of that that is in there. Anyway, the thing here is that they don't even do that in the Chinese plant. So this is why they're excited about getting the data, leaving aside what they do with it. We just hope it doesn't scare them too much, because nothing ever runs as good as you think it is until you start looking at the details.
Yeah. All right. It would seem rollout has been delayed, I guess, regarding the Insight. Previously forecast market penetration, sales and resulting stock price seem to have fallen short. Outside of COVID, what other challenges have you faced rolling things out?
COVID, with respect to making the wheels turn, COVID's the biggest one. It's a little bit like walking through molasses. You can get all things done, but you got supply chain issues, and you've got shipping delays and all that kind of stuff. I'm telling the same story here that every CEO tells you that has to deal with international business anyway. The other one is that remember much earlier I mentioned that there's been a shortage in the upstream raw materials. So when you make the purified silicon, or make the ingots and the wafers, I should say, you start with purified silicon, and to purify the silicon, you have to have these giant reactors that are very expensive. that take the not purified stuff, and then they go through a set of chemical reactions and so forth to get all the impurities out, and then they do put a trace amounts of gallium in it, which is necessary later on during the manufacturing. What happened is that there was big expansions in the 2018 to 2020 timeframe, and they outpaced the upstream supply. So there started to be shortages and prices went up. So many of the expansion plans, Insight itself is not reliant on expansions. So, both cases so far we've gone into existing plants, but that's when most people have their checkbooks open, and those have been slowed down. It's been going on a little bit longer than we thought, that slowdown, and I think that's probably partly also due to COVID in its own, in terms of building new reactors and getting them on stream. But they're starting to come on now, and we expect to see a buying cycle, an expansion cycle begin again soon. The other thing that's happening at the same time is there's a move to a new cell technology. There's two of them, heterojunction and TOPCon, and we're seeing more TOPCon. So this is also driving some delays because people are getting, the early pilot lines set up and, doing the debugging on those and so forth. So that's just a natural part of a technology change.
All right. Next question here is, you installed the Insight around Chinese New Year's. You mentioned that's been at least 30 days. How does that kind of roll out? You don't just plug it in and it works. You sort of test it and tweak it, and what does that rollout kind of look like?
Question must be coming from somebody who's got an engineering background. The way it works is that because these plants operate behind a firewall, what we do is we put a server in there. The data they work with is considered to be highly sensitive, so they don't want to upload it to just some cloud server somewhere. So we get the server in, we get it up and running within their IT network internally, and then we have to bring up the wafer tracking system, which is the one that we used outside China. We used their own wafer tracking. They already had it. This company didn't have any. So that's when we partnered with Bybart to get those systems in place. So you get that going, turn that on, and load the software for Insight itself and also into the same server, and then start testing the entire system. So there's also some training involved to train their people to do the tracking properly. They have to follow certain operating procedures for that. And we need to run through a series of test cases, and we need to have enough data from the wafer tracking and the cell testers to be able to run through all the test cases before we say, okay, yeah, it's running. That's the process. So we're in the middle of that now.
That'll take a couple more months-ish?
No, I'd say it's we're looking to have it going so that we can start to say, okay, now let's put it through some exercises around the end, by the end of March, if not sooner.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. It's a bit of a long question, but shareholders saying they feel uncertain and concerned about the share price, as many companies in the junior energy sort of tech space have been clobbered over the last 12 months here since it really peaked out. And then he ends off by saying, what I'm saying is, tell me we'll be all okay and make me feel good again. So I guess your confidence in the future of Aurora?
Well, I have to start by saying this: I'm not your mom. I don't control the share prices, but yeah, I'm really confident. In my view, the markets have been crap. I agree with that. Sorry for being a little profane, but I think it's deserved. Yeah. And we haven't had what I would describe as being, here's a bunch of news here, here's a bunch of news there, and so forth. So we've been a bit quiet, and I recognize that, causes some discomfort. I promise to do my best to ensure there's more and more of that as we look ahead into this coming fiscal year. I hope today's news was a little bit helpful. The fact is that the business is executing, and we've been doing the work that we know needs to get done in order to keep the company on the path to bring Insight to the market. And we're pretty focused on that. In fact, we're laser focused on that. So I think I can assure all of you that regardless of what goes on in the stock market, the company is moving forward, and I'm confident in us achieving our goals.
Okay. On a different perspective here, a question, I guess, geopolitically, there's been some friction between Canada and the Australian government with China. Are you seeing any, is that impeding or causing friction for you guys doing business in China?
No, I can say that plainly.
Okay.
That's all operating at a level like 14,000 feet above us.
Yeah. And then
it doesn't make any difference to us.
Okay. Does the acquisition of BT Imaging bring in more talented people to Aurora's team? And I guess how, off of that, how integrated are you guys? Is it expected to be a highly integrated team, or are they going to be kind of running two separate operations?
The integration comes together at Insight. So, you know, we're going to start day one with, you know, putting in place our plans. We're already working on that now, and then the designs and the projects to bring it so that the data flows and the look and feel and how things work together is seen to be seamless. Think Apple in that sense between the different products and devices. That's the objective. But in terms of the businesses, that each will continue also to have its own standalone businesses as we move forward. So it's a I hate to use the word synergies because it's so overused in business discussions, but truly in this case, there's synergies that build upon the existing way that the businesses are being done, and make more of those. We don't have to do all kinds of, you know, rearranging and everything else in order to make that work. This is really good because it will fit together really well.
There's a question here on can any, I guess, BT's, your Insight product or your own sensors, fear of being reverse engineered or copied by anyone else in the market?
If you're doing business in Asia, that's always a fear. And if you're not afraid of it, then you're naive. So the fact here is this, of all the products, Insight, the DM, and the BT Imaging products, we're the leaders in these products. And they're sophisticated products. You can replicate the hardware and you still won't get them to work right. There's a lot in the know-how and embedded in things that you can't see within them, and how, in terms of how they operate. And the patent base that we're also acquiring is on the order of 80 patents in that field. So this is the thing you really got to watch out for is cheap knockoffs. And the way you get past that is that you're always advancing the state of the art and making sure that people need that state of the art, so that the people who are following behind you can't keep up.
You can't talk about sort of the magnitude of revenues, but can you talk about BT's revenue model? Is it essentially one-time hardware sales with some service maintenance revenues, or is there any kind of SaaS or real recurring type revenues there?
We're bringing the SaaS part of this. There's capital equipment sales. That's what it is.
So similar to the DM's revenue model with.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. All right. On your sales team, do you have a Chinese resident rep?
We have 6 application engineers. We have 1 senior commercial person. I don't call him sales because he's senior enough that he's business development and sales and customer relations all wrapped into one. on contract. We are actually working to recruit more people at that level, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
So we have at least one right now. So the answer to that part of the question is yes, but I wanted to give a bit more of a framework that that's an area for development for the company.
All right. Speaking of patents, are your patents, are they registered in China? Like, do you have Chinese patents? And
Yes, we do.
okay.
I've looked at BT Imaging's portfolio, and I believe, but I can't. That's something I don't have burned into my my memory banks. The coverage is worldwide, though. We make sure that our patents are we have patent coverage in all areas of importance with respect to doing business in this industry.
All right, we are running out of time here, Gord. So we should wrap things up. Any final comments? Any concluding thoughts here?
Well, what we're doing now and what we announced today is what we said we were going to do. It's a big step. The acquisition is one that is beneficial in a multitude of different ways, ranging from the technology, the product line, the market coverage, the financials, all aspects of building the business and moving it forward, making the company bigger and stronger and more important to the market. So I'm personally really excited about this. And I look forward to being able to bring more news of a meaningful and progressive nature over the next coming months as we move forward. So thanks for your time and your attention. I really appreciate it today.
All right, Gord, thank you very much for taking the time to chat with everyone like this. I look forward to watching the news and seeing how this all progresses and rolls out. So thanks a lot. Have a great day, and we'll talk again some other time.
Thanks, Martin.
Cheers.